Hello, everybody. Is this on? Yeah. Oh, I'm dreadful with microphones. Hello, everybody. My name is Carol Clapperton. I work for the council, and welcome this evening. I'm just going to do a bit of housekeeping before I pass over to Cliff. We are expecting in the region of 117 people, so a few more people may come in. But can I just do a little bit of housekeeping with you? So we're not expecting an alarm this evening. So if there is an alarm that goes off, our exit points are over there, and just beyond that yellow wall over there. And the muster points are in Lionel Road South, over there and over there, at either end of the road. But hopefully we won't need that tonight. If you need the toilets, ladies and gents, just outside the door. Our food. Please just help yourself to the food tonight, and may we thank Cliff, his team, and the GTEC Stadium for providing all the food and all the facilities today. They've been most generous with the food, so please help yourself to the food. If you would like some gluten-free sandwiches, there is staff hanging around at the back, and they do have gluten-free, so just nab a member of staff. Over in that corner, we have halal food. What else I got to tell you? Filming. We are filming this tonight. Now, we don't tend to scan the audience, but if you want to be super sure that you're not in the filming, you're probably best going to be over in that far corner over there. Okay? Unless you'll put your hands up for the questions. We are also taking photographs, and Yag is behind us taking the photograph at the moment, which is rather annoying. He will be taking photographs throughout, which we will use on the council's website and in our media. If you would prefer not to be photographed, can you please Yag know if you can raise your hand at some point and just let Yag know. Okay. And finally, you will see the blinds have gone down. I know everybody was upset that you can't see the stadium itself, the ground itself. That's because the cameras need the blind to go down. But at the end of this event, if you want to go out that door, then you will be able to see the grounds. Okay. And with that, I'm going to say thank you very much to Cliff and the GTEC team. They have been absolutely amazing. And I'm going to pass over now to Cliff.
Thank you, Carol. Good evening. My name's Cliff Crown. I'm chairman of Brentford Football Club. I've been in that position for almost 12 years, and it's a pleasure to welcome you all to the GTEC Community Stadium this evening. Before we start, I'd like to take the opportunity to ask each of the councillors to introduce themselves, and then please do put your hand up if you have any questions. I have a few questions in front of me which will intersperse during the evening, and the plan will be to go on until 8 p.m. when we will close. So without further ado, can I ask Sue to lead us off?
Hello everyone, I'm Cabinet Member for Housing and Homelessness. My name is Sue Sampson, my phone decides to ring. Ward Councillor for Isleworth Ward.
Councillor Raghuvinder Singh Sidhu from Bedford Ward, lead member for Regulations and Public Safety.
Councillor Catherine Dunn, Cabinet Member for Climate, Environment and Transport.
Councillor Shantanu Rajawat, a leader of the council, Ward Councillor in Heston West, also hold the portfolio for Finance and External Affairs.
Hi, good evening all. Councillor Lily Bath, Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care, Public Health and Health Integration, and I represent the Bedfont Ward.
Hi, evening all. My name is Councillor Shivraj Garewal, and I am Cabinet Member for Infrastructure, Recycling and Parking, as well as I am Councillor for Heston Central Ward. Yeah.
Thank you. And at the end of the table, Samia Chowdhury will be joining us a little later. She's at another event, but should be here within the next half an hour or so. So, do we have any questions from the floor? If you'd like to raise your hand. Yes, sir. Gentleman at the back. We'll bring a mic to you.
In my mouth? Okay, my name's Derek Collett. I'm a resident of Brentford. I have two related questions which would probably best be answered by the Deputy Leader if he was here, but I'll ask it anyway because you may be able to answer me. Relate to Albany Parade and Block D on the High Street. My first question relating to Albany Parade is the funding for this development in place, or are you dependent upon a co-development with a housing association or such like? And my second question is, inevitably, when are the shops going to be occupied in Block D? I've had my hair cut specially today for this occasion, but to find Bia, who was in occupation at Albany Parade, I've had today to cycle to Isleworth to find her. And she expected to be in occupation some 6 months ago and is still not able to be there. So I'm hoping you can help me on these issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rajawat.
Thanks, Cliff. Thank you very much for the question. Can I just put on record my thanks as well to you, Cliff, and the team here for hosting us this evening. So on your first question on Albany Parade, yes, the funding is in place. There is a little bit of a pause just at the moment while we go through some of the finer details on design. To the best of my knowledge, there isn't a registered provider involved in that. It is a direct development, but that funding very much is in place, and there'll be further updates throughout the year on that going to Cabinet, so please do keep a lookout on that. In terms of Block D, appreciate that it's not been as quick as some had expected. However, there is a legal process that's going through with those that have been offered units within that, and obviously they take, as long as they take, they're a conversation between lawyers. That is going on. We would like occupancy to start later on this year.
Thank you.
Just to update, because Tom said it at the meeting that we had with the retailers that was organised by Brentford Voice, that we are expecting some of those to be occupied within the next couple of months, and then more from there on in. Because they're not fitted out at the moment, but in order to get them fitted out, I think it depends how far ahead they are with the other negotiations and supplying paperwork and negotiating what they want within the unit. But there's at least a couple of them where they're expecting to get the keys in the next few weeks.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Hold on 1 second. Mike's coming.
Good evening. Thank you for arranging this. My name is Mike Chada. I live in Dean Avenue, Hounslow Central. Some 15 years ago, we had some issues in our road regarding the resurfacing. I wrote to the council many a time because we were getting the pebbles coming off the road into the pavement, into our houses, and a lot of us have parquet flooring in our street. So it damaged our parquet flooring. I cut the story short. I managed to contact, after so many emails and phone calls, I was given the name of Miss Lawson and Tina Duncan. I think Miss Lawson has left. Tina Duncan was my point of contact. Every time we needed anything in Hounslow which was not right, cleaning, this, that, potholes, I had a good working relationship with her. The neighborhood people used to go and meet her in the council, in the old one, and we had a good working relation. We got things done. We were very happy. Last year, I got an email from Tina saying, goodbye, I'm going. And she gave me 3 names of the people who will be working for us. I've tried contacting them. I wrote emails. I've called the feedback in the complaint section. They never seem to pick the phone. You leave messages, they don't return the calls. Then I managed to speak to a manager, Lanya. I've spoken to her once, but I think she said that you're going to redo the phone system. It's not working properly. They know about it. It still is not working. When will this work? Because people need to complain about things. We think that that department is purposely not adequate because you don't want people to complain. That's the feeling amongst the residents. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll take that. So please do complain. It helps us improve services. But you're absolutely right. There's a fundamental refresh of both the telephone system, the website, and it's been designed to take on board the feedback that you've given. Some of it is about simplifying the route to get to speak to someone or get the information that you want. And there is a whole project team that sits within the council that is doing that. I can tell you, Mr. Shadder, that that system is due to go live in the next couple of weeks. It's in final testing, so it's not gone live just yet, but it will do, and that will be supplemented with a new website. The website will allow you to transact more business online, so that the need to make phone calls won't necessarily be there, hopefully freeing up the phone system. But absolutely, as part of that and the overhaul that we've had on the way our residents interact with the council, there is absolutely an expectation that if you do ring, one, it's as simple to get through to the department that you want to, and you speak to someone. If you can't speak to someone, you leave a message. Absolutely, there is an expectation that that call is returned promptly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, lady in the second row.
Okay, well, I'm originally from Birmingham, moved to Richmond over 25 years ago, and moved to Kew, and whilst in Kew, used to come to Chiswick all the time and thought, you know what, Chiswick is such a beautiful place, we're going to move there. So we've been here for about 10 years now, and it's really sad to see the demise of Chiswick High Road. The way the roads have been done, I understand about the cyclists and all that, but it's awful. It's absolutely awful. I walk up and down that road multiple times a week, and I've even took photos of emergency services, police cars, ambulances that cannot get up that road because they're parked behind a bus because now there's only one lane for them to go in. And it's just shocking. And I speak to numerous residents, and they're all absolutely appalled. So all of these reports that people are for it, I honestly believe it's made up. I do, because everybody I speak to cannot see the benefits of what you've done to that high road. If there are people that feel like that, it's the minority. It's absolutely not the majority. And I want to know who makes those decisions to do that, and are we going to do anything to change it back again? Because the shops are opening and closing, and it's awful. And it's awful. You see, people are trying. It used to be a real foodie place. And the amount of restaurants that open and close, because the parking now is atrocious. People can't park there. So that's one of my questions. But I just feel it's so sad to see what's happened to the high road.
Thank you very much. I think that's one for Catherine.
Could be. I mean, so I was at Chiswick at the weekend, and Chiswick is thriving. It's a wonderful place, and I wish that we could replicate a lot of what we have in Chiswick in other parts of the borough. The markets are absolutely fantastic, food places, restaurants, lots of places to shop. No, I don't live there. So there's a lot going on for Chiswick. Now, that's not to say that there haven't been problems as well. We know that high streets across the country are suffering, and Chiswick has suffered from that as well. But it's simply not true to say there's nowhere to park. There are lots of parking places.
I'm not sure that applies just to Chiswick, to be fair.
No. Yeah. So I think there's different views, and it's, you know, obviously I haven't just been to Chiswick once. So, you know, there is a lot going on there, and there are problems like there are everywhere, and we need to work on those. We have done a lot of work. We spent money in Chiswick to make it a better place. I mean, you know, improve the area so more people enjoy being there, improve the amenities. So that's always been the case, and I know I have. So I've seen footage from 10 years ago, before the cycle lane was put in. There was never a continuous bus lane on Chiswick High Road.
No, but there's 2 lanes for them to be able to, like, you know, pull out and go into, but now cars are stuck behind the bus lane. They are, but it's not a bus lane, but they're stuck behind the bus because of the
Yeah. So the problem is too many cars, and this is a problem we're dealing with throughout London, throughout the borough of Hounslow, and we need to work on ways to reduce those car journeys. I mean, you did talk about doing some very short journeys by car, and we have to encourage more people not to do that, because that leaves the roads free for the people who do need to use their cars. And we acknowledge that there are lots of people who do need to use their cars or who need to use cars for certain journeys. But we will not solve the problems of traffic unless we understand how to move people onto different forms of transport. Public transport, walking and cycling for shorter journeys. It's the only way we're going to solve this problem, because there are more people living in the area. If all those people have cars, use cars for all their journeys, we're not going to solve this problem.
Thank you. Yeah. Shantanu.
I mean, just to add on the broader piece around the high street, look, footfall is generally very strong in Chiswick, and the spend is, Councillor Biddulph, we will disagree on this. You know we'll disagree on this. And spend was also fairly strong on that high street. But there is a broader piece. We are looking at all of our 4 town centres. That's Hounslow, Feltham, Chiswick and Brentford. There is a master plan process that is coming forward later on this year, which is a conversation between the council and residents about that town centre, specifically Chiswick. That will be coming forward later on this year. We've done that already in central Hounslow and Feltham. Central Hounslow and Brentford. Feltham and Chiswick is coming later on this year. I'd encourage you to take part in that when that comes forward.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Hi there. My name's Nigel Brophy. I'm chairman of Thames Tradesmen's Rowing Club. I just want to say this is a great opportunity. You know, you're giving us great initiative. So thank you very much for that. My question is, what are your plans with regards to the land by Barnes Bridge, where the new pedestrian bridge is located, or where Chiswick Boathouse once was?
Really great question. Thank you for asking it. As you say, there was a boathouse there. It's sadly not there at the moment. We are in conversations with UK Rowing around some sort of provision on that site. I'll be very honest with you, they are early conversations at the moment, but I think there is an appetite to bring another boathouse there. Obviously on that Duke's Meadows site there is further redevelopment with the Medonians site and the rugby club there, which will potentially provide a clubhouse that could be used. There is also a project on Barnes Bridge, so linking up the footbridge with the Barnes Bridge and the view from Barnes Bridge. That's being led by a group in Richmond, and Richmond are the planning authority for that. So there are lots of little things. I guess I'm keen, as is Councillor Bruce, as a lead member, to make sure that they're as joined up as possible, so that, you know, one thing doesn't come in isolation. You actually look at the whole area, and there has been a bit of master planning done on Duke's Meadows. So whilst I can't give you any concrete proposals at this point, I can assure you that there are conversations going on, because we don't want that site to lay vacant. And I know that the boat race are very interested in whatever we want to bring forward there, because it's the end of the boat race route as well. So there is an opportunity there.
Thank you. I'm just going to ask a question from the floor, from the ones we received on the website. Is Ume here, by any chance? Would you like to ask your question, Ume?
Do you want a copy of it?
Sorry?
Can
Do
you
want-
read the question on behalf of him?
Sure. Why does the council not enforce their policies against rogue landlords in Hounslow? Why does the council not investigate people who are not paying council tax and rogue landlords who do not have HMO licenses and are not allowed to let out beds in sheds? I thought that was a particularly good question, so
I think we've got a hand up as well.
Hello, hi. Actually, my question is linked to several issues, as I'm also a parent of children with SEN. And this question is linked, this issue is linked to several other issues on our street. My neighbor's here as well. And the issue we have is we find that there's an inconsistency in the application of policies, and whereas there's a massive issue of parking on our road. We live just opposite the Hounslow Mosque, and there are only a few houses with no parking, and there are many, sorry, I'm extremely nervous. There are many houses where people have a driveway, but there are several of them that have beds in sheds. And one household may have up to five cars. And since 2022, I've actually been in contact with Councillor Dunn regarding a charging point on our street. We have to drop our child to a special school in New Malden. And whilst we have purchased an electric car, there's a massive issue. We've been told that since 2022, we've been waiting for a charging point on Granville Avenue. And there's an issue with parking, an issue with illegal tenants having extra cars on the street. And we've tried to offer multiple options to allow us to try and have a solution to charge our cars. And I think there's quite a lot of we've tried. Sorry, it's quite frustrating because in one way, whilst we have an issue of while our issue involves disability, we've been told that the council cannot exercise any discretion in their policy, whereas we found that for someone else, I won't name any names, but who is a member of the council, there's been an exercise of discretion, and that person is letting out a flat outside, and that's added an extra car on our street. And I think it's important to apply discretion consistently, and not apply discretion when it's benefiting someone financially, but when it involves disability, policies are applied rigidly, whereas I'm sure, I think, Mr. Shantini, you have a legal background, you do know that the law trumps policies, and there is a need to exercise discretion, especially when disability is involved. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Sue Sampson.
Sorry? Yeah. Okay, I'm just going to, there's a number of us that will cover a number of points that you've raised. Enforcement regarding the beds in sheds. Is that what you're going to do that?
Yeah.
Right, okay, well I'll speak from the housing perspective regarding enforcement. If you are aware of any situation where, or anybody knows of any situation where there is what is deemed a bed in a shed, which is somebody living at the end of somebody's garden, you've got to tell the enforcement team. Okay. Okay, well the lead member can take the details and we'll have a look at that. But normally, sometimes it's not straightforward, or it's not, sometimes they're not, without knowing the detail, it's hard to go into, but sometimes they're not quite straightforward cases. There could be there could be a retrospective planning order, that a planning application that's been made. There could be a whole host of things that what caused the delay. But I can assure you, our enforcement team are very good, and they do act on every single inquiry or report that they get. I deal with them on a daily basis because I do what I do in the housing side of things. But just one bit I want to touch on. Right, so Catherine will answer the bit regarding the parking and the, not the parking, the EV charging point. But the other bit I'd just like to be clear on, you said that one of the councillors has been given discretion. Discretion to do what? Right, okay, well, we...
Whereas I'm one person who's I'm directly impacted by this decision. I was not consulted with. There are only 3 or 4 houses that don't have driveway on this road. So
Okay.
We've been fighting to get a parking spot to allow us to charge our car. There's no demonstrable risk of harm because my neighbor next door has been using the driveway. Whilst I know policies change, but there's a certain level of discretion, and the law says that if there is a demonstrable risk of harm, then I would understand the refusal. But we've been constantly getting a total refusal. We can't consider any other circumstances. That's
And
the
this
policy.
is regarding parking?
Parking. But that involves a lot of things because it's to do with charging, it's to do with not being able to get a charging point on the road for nearly 4 years now.
Okay.
And
But
other issues.
There seems to be a lot of things that need to be unpicked from that. But if you have got any concerns that a councillor has been treated differently to yourself, which I find that very hard to believe because we are all treated the same. Right, but if you feel that, we have the chief exec here, and I urge you to go and speak to her and give that information.
Well, I would like everyone to, if discretion is being exercised
No,
for a councillor,
there should not be discretion
it
for
should be
anybody.
for everyone.
The policy is very clear. There is no discretion, not in those circumstances, no. Unless there's medical grounds, other than that, there is no discretion. Okay, the policy is very clear. Mandy?
Yes, we'd like to have that conversation.
Okay.
I'm not seeing you, but I'd like to say to you this is happening.
Okay, well, if it is happening, you need to bring it to the attention of senior officers. And Mandy, you can't get no higher than Mandy, apart from the leader of the council, but take it straight to Mandy, okay?
Thank you. Who else would like to
Yes,
respond?
regarding beds and shed, we are very serious about it, and 84 complaints came last year, which make 20% of the total complaints we receive for enforcement, and all are like thoroughly investigated. In last 5 years, we have, I think, roughly nearly £500,000 was fined to the landlords who are using beds and sheds. So we are very serious about it, and again, like we are like enforcement team is very strict on that, and if there is any particular case, your one, again, you have we are like councillors are under strict scrutiny by different bodies. We have monitoring officers, we have like chief exec, so if somebody is doing that illegally, that should be stopped.
Thank you. Catherine?
Obviously there's a lot going on there, but just to touch on the part about the EV charge points. So we introduced our EV charging strategy a couple of years ago, and we have been not without difficulty, and there's been quite a lot of delays involved in procuring charge point operators in order to roll out charge points across the borough. Some of those delays were caused by delays in getting the funding that we need from the government. Eventually we were awarded the funding, then it took a long time on negotiations. Some of that negotiation still going on, but largely resolved now. So we have recently appointed 3 charge point operators, and we'll be able to make further announcements on that soon, but we do need to appoint more just for the different types of chargers that we need. So yes, there have been delays for everyone, unfortunately, in terms of rolling out those charge points.
Thank you. Shivraj.
Yes, I believe you want to know about your drop curve. As far as the drop curve is concerned, we adopt a residential crossover policy, and which is technically based, which means that how far is your driveway from the road, and the depth of your driveway to your front door, and the width of your what we call driveway as well. But if you do not meet those requirements, you will not have a crossover. But in case you have a disability, what you're talking about, and you say, why don't we apply a discretion policy? We cannot apply that. But as a disabled person, you can apply for a disabled bay outside, but not to the parking, but to the traffic team. And they will provide you a disabled bay in the proximity of your house, but that disabled bay will not be wholly or dedicated to you only. Anybody disabled on the road can park there.
Thank you. And Councillor Rajaratsu.
So just going back to the question as it was read out, as I've understood it, just for information more than anything else, I think it is an important point to make around enforcement. Councillor Sidhu sort of talked about how seriously we take the scourge of HMOs and road landlords. So those of you who are eagle-eyed will have seen at the last full council, all the councillors cross-party agreed a motion against road landlords. That was absolutely a very clear statement around of our intent to tackle this. We have a HMO licensing scheme that is currently out for consultation for renewal. That ran for a couple of years and will, I'm sure, be renewed going forward. But in terms of tangible evidence that we do take it seriously, if you've been following the council website, you would have seen on there a news release saying that someone has recently been fined £70,000 for illegally renting out an outbuilding as well, and that went through the court system. So we will pursue it. Sometimes they are complex, as Councillor Sampson said, and Councillor Sidhu said. Sometimes they do take a long time, and I appreciate from the residents' point of view, it may well feel like nothing is happening. I can assure you there is always something going on in the background. We do not let them drop.
Thank you very much. Next question. Sir, in the front row.
My name's Phil Heyman, and I'm a resident in Isleworth. Last year I had cause to go to West Middlesex Hospital twice a day for a period of 5 weeks. So it meant journey there, back, twice a day. And along the road directly in front of West Middlesex Hospital, there's a cycle lane on both sides. Now this has removed one lane from that road, and now that is the access route that ambulances take to get to the hospital. Every day that I went down that, the cycle path is atrocious. Any cyclists that I saw were not in the cycle path, they were on the main road. So I think that unless you can improve these cycle paths, they are absolutely useless, because they're taking up one lane where it would be, if you had it dedicated to buses and ambulances, then that would be brilliant for, or even put it in the centre and you have it for ambulances alone, or some, because it's a hospital and ambulances do need to get there urgently. There's no two way. But if you go from the entrance of West Middlesex Hospital, it's at least 100 metres in both directions that you cannot get. The third lane is taken by the cycle route. It probably closely relates to this lady's conversation earlier.
Okay,
but
thank
they
you.
weren't being used. They weren't being used.
Okay, Catherine?
So cycle lanes on Twickenham Road, I mean, I know there are cycle lanes that don't get used. I do not believe that about Twickenham Road. I cycle there every day. There is no way you would go in the road and not in the lane, so I don't think that's true. It may depend on the time of day you were there. You know, they're used a lot for commuting. But the point is, it's about safety. And we do have an obligation to make the roads safe for cyclists. We also have an obligation to encourage more use of cycling and public transport. And one of the ways we know works is to provide infrastructure to make it safer for people to use those modes of transport. Of course, we consult with the hospital before we put that in, and they were involved in discussing some of the spacing of the ones that are there, and some of those were moved in order to provide points where vehicles can pull in. But in general, the emergency services don't oppose plans for cycle lanes. They don't oppose plans for low traffic neighbourhoods because they know that these measures help to keep cyclists and pedestrians safe, reduce the number of accidents, and also increase the health of the general population. So we also, there's some other measures that have been taken in that area, which involve preventing through traffic through some of the side streets. The ambulances can still use those streets. So overall, there's been a very positive response from the hospital about the changes that were brought about in that area.
Thank you. I think it's fair to say that there will always be cyclists who don't stick to the rules and cycle in the cycle lane, but on balance, we would hope that the majority do.
Yeah, I mean, people might pull out to overtake of those ones, but because there's no actual barrier, you know, there's no curb on those. They're not very high-tech cycle lanes. They're just ones. So I find it. I just can't see why a cyclist wouldn't use it, because otherwise if they're wanting to. No, I don't think. Maybe at a specific time, but yeah. Or sometimes there's ponding issues, but generally there I don't see those problems. I think there are other cycle lanes like along the A4, for example, which are really awful and do need some work doing on them. But it may have been to do with the time of year, and maybe there wasn't, you know, the cleansing hadn't been done, or there was leaves or something.
Thank you. Thank you. Gentleman in the front row.
Good evening. My name's Andrew Stevens. I'm from the Gunnersbury Park Garden Estate, just across the road here. First of all, thank you for leaving your venue open here for us. It's the first time I've been inside a soccer stadium, so it's soccer. It's not football, it's soccer. Anyway, I mean, talking about the bicycle thing, I don't know if the council or anyone has ever done any accurate surveying of the amount of use that a cycle lane in any of these particular areas. I mean, I'm not a cyclist, but I walk a lot, but I don't use cycle lanes, but I can understand the frustrations when you drive along a road, be it in Hounslow or anywhere, and there's a cycle lane and a cyclist on the road. It's frustrating, but maybe there needs to be a survey done and some figures about this, so there's evidence either way. Anyway, that's not my query. Is possibly associated with one of your previous questions. Is in the garden estate, which is a conservation area, category 4, what's it called? Something 4, category 4, Article 4. Thank you. Article 4 thing. We're having a lot of issues with HMOs, both licensed and unlicensed, the beds in sheds, as it was described, people putting in planning applications for extending their garage to make it a gym or a recreation room, but including a bathroom and making it so the garage door is not openable and all this sort of thing. And very obviously creating these HMOs by stealth, or these extra rooms, but there seems to be very little pickup in the planning process, and also very little coordination between the HMO licensing process and the planning process. People apply to extend to make their 1920s terraced house into a 5-bedroom thing with a loft conversion and all this sort of thing, and very obviously creating HMOs by stealth, but they're not going through the process to convert them from C3 to C4, not putting in applications and putting in HMO license applications, but that doesn't seem to be picking up the change of use things. So there seems to be a big disconnect in the planning process and in the way, even the way the planning website works at the moment, but hopefully that gets addressed down the track, as you're all aware of it, I'm sure. But yeah, is there some way of making the planning process more interrogative, and that the planning officers, when they get this, we could spend our life writing planning objections, but that's really not the way I prefer to live. I would like the planning process to be more, especially in a conservation area like ours, to be more rigorous.
Thank you. That's a really good question.
So I think I agree with you. We want it to be rigorous, but just to be really clear that the HMO licensing process is a planning process. It's administered by the planning authority as it stands. A lot of it is governed by legislation. You can only take the application as you see it in front of you. So, whilst logic would say conversion of a 5-bedroom house into separate things, and conversion of garages potentially could, if the application says that's not the case, you have to take that on face value. Whilst I appreciate your point around not wanting necessarily to spend your entire time reporting these things, unfortunately that is the best way. With the best will in the world, we've got a small enforcement team. They can't be everywhere. They do rigorously investigate and enforce. What we often find actually as a tactic where we have served enforcement notices is people then put in a planning application to retrospectively make it legal, which then delays the process of enforcement. If that gets rejected, which ultimately generally it does, then you can go to the planning inspector, which then also delays it because there's a backlog with the planning inspector. So there is a problem in the system, and we're working with government to try and solve that. Some of that is around skills and competencies and having planning officers and enforcement officers. There is a London-wide, in fact, probably a national shortage. So we actually invest a little bit of money to grow our own, in the hope that they stay there. So we've got adverts out at the moment for planning apprentices who will stay with us hopefully for a number of years to help with that backlog. But we have to work within the system. So whilst I appreciate a lot of what you said actually is very common sense, planning law perhaps is slightly different, and we have to follow that process that is dictated in that. And that's why we've got the additional licensing scheme, because that's a very quick way of actually licensing HMOs, but also then enforcing where there isn't a license in place.
Thank you. Next question. Lady over there has had her hand up for a while.
Thanks. I'm Fran, I'm from Isleworth. So just to pick up briefly, I would agree with what the gentleman said about that bike lane. It isn't used very much, and one of the key reasons is it's very polluted. And one of the reasons it's polluted is because the traffic's been funneled onto the Twickenham Road. And my son is keen to cycle to school, but we won't let him because it's just not suitable really for cyclists. So I think to just assume that it's okay for it to be there and it gets used, I think that's probably the wrong assumption. But my question was about the Waterman Arts Centre, and in particular the Hounslow Arts Trust. and I understand that Hounslow has appoints one of the trustees. And I just wondered, I think the leader of the council appoints the trustee, and it's generally sort of revolving amongst the Brentford councillors. And I wondered if you had any reflections on how that had worked previously with the sudden closure of Waterman's, and if there's something that could be done differently going forward, more support for the councillor, a wider pool of councillors, because what we've ended up with Waterman's is a very sad-looking site, which was a great community asset, not just for Brentford, but wider. And I think Bell Square isn't a substitute.
So, I mean, just to be clear on, so Hounslow Arts Trust, as it's trading as Waterman's, is a national portfolio organisation. There are two parts of that. One was the physical site at Brentford. The other was their work in the community. So Bell Square is one part of that. They are part of their commission as part of the national portfolio organisation is to be going around the borough. And absolutely, there is more that can be done there. And we have a dedicated culture team that's working with them to try and achieve that and help them achieve that in the context of a new culture strategy which is being drafted at the moment. In terms of the situation that Hounslow Arts Trust found themselves in, it came about very quickly, and it was a perfect storm of increasing costs and demand dropping. Now, you know, whilst I appoint one trustee on that board, there are other trustees, and I think what they were looking at was a bigger problem that was getting harder and harder to deal with. When the trustee that we had on at the time, I think it was Councillor Williams, if I remember correctly, when this all came out, we were very quick to react once we heard that there was a problem and trying to support the organisation to be viable. Ultimately, the decision to close that site was not the council's. Just to be really clear on that, that was a decision taken by the trust because they could not operate with the costs. I think their utilities costs went up from, I may well be making this up, but from what I remember, it was somewhere like £60,000 a year to £120,000 a year. So it was a massive increase that just constrained them, and they didn't have the demand coming through the door.
But I think on demand, having used it with my son when he was smaller, there was some fabulous children's
I agree with you.
theatre, and there
Absolutely.
was demand there. You've got Chiswick, you've got the whole wider area, and other arts venues did survive after COVID. So there was something about Waterman's that was different, and I suppose that was my question. I'm not sure that if you want to say a bit more on that, about whether you've reflected on whether the appointees are the correct ones, are given the correct support, and could potentially have escalated things more quickly, so it didn't come to you as such a surprise.
So I think generally when we appoint to anybody, there is an expectation of some training, and absolutely, I reflect on that very regularly. Would it have made a difference in this circumstance? It came about fairly suddenly. I don't know. I mean, as I say, that's one trustee in a number of trustees that sit on that board.
Well, I understand that trustee didn't attend many of the meetings because they were too busy.
I couldn't tell you how many they did.
So I just think
I'll take it on face value.
There was a missed opportunity there to
but
step in more fully, even if it wasn't the ultimate solution. Because otherwise, what's the point of you having a trustee?
Well, we put a little bit of grant money into that. So we put in about £110,000 a year. Some of that is for the community running. Look, I'm not disagreeing with you. Of course, there can always be more training. I think, though, that is one of a number of trustees that sit on that board. I have every sympathy with them. But I can assure you, from the point at which we knew, we acted very, very quickly to try and support them. And that wasn't just the council. That was also, oh God, I've forgotten their name, English.
The Arts Council?
Arts Council, the Arts Council, sorry,
well,
yes.
I think that was one of the issues as well, wasn't it? Over-reliance on Arts Council funding, rather than being more commercial as some of the competitors in the area
Quite possibly. I don't think we disagree necessarily. It's a shame, but I think looking forward, obviously we are absolutely committed to providing an arts centre in Brentford. Maybe not on that site. We're very close to realising that, and I think watch this space. I think May you'll start hearing announcements about that as well.
Thank you. Another question. Over here.
Hello. Can you hear me all right? I can't tell from this. Oh, closer. Sorry. Hello. I can think of, I can pick up on several things that have been said here, but I'm trying to get it to a much broader thing here, which is that, I mean, money's talked about a lot here, and I don't believe the council have got that much that they can actually direct after their commitments by the government. So that has to be borne in mind. I'd like to pick up on a couple of things beyond that, which is on cycling, by the way. One of the concerns is actually seeing cyclists. I mean, if you're going to have cycleways, that's a good thing if it's going to keep them safe, but at the same time, many of them are not visible quite easily in the evening. They can disappear, and it's a concern for motorists. And also when they start doing pillions and all sorts of things. So these sort of things obviously may get down to legislation if something happens, but there seems to be no control. But on roads in general, it's something, a little bit of a hobby horse of mine, but in 2013, the council were given £800 million to refurbish all the roads and all of the pavements in Hounslow. Now, the first year, 100 million was spent on lighting and certainly resurfacing some roads, and I pushed for certain roads to be done myself. Now, I've recently, I think somebody on the panel there knows, Tesco's were pushing to get a gully where we've got flooding in Feltham, and I pushed it, and eventually through a councillor they are now ticking it as something they need to keep an eye on. We've had that for years and years and years. They say they fixed it and they will follow, but with the funding, can we have an update on that? Because that's an awful lot of money, and it never seems to come up. As we know they're doing work, but you know, I heard recently about potholes and things like this, and I'm thinking that 800 million, even if they've got 700 million, is an awful lot of money. And the last thing, if I may just say, the lighting, especially obviously in the summer now, in the winter, it's very nice to say, well, we want to save money, but in certain roads, you cannot see people when they're just, you know, wandering across the road, they don't look, etc. And I have mentioned it to certain councillors, and they're saying, well, one of the things, of course, is legislation. People obviously on their phones, or just not being bothered, or they just feel safe. So that's, you know, it's a general question there.
Yeah, lots to get into there, but ultimately, of course, a lot depends on the individual. I often see cyclists around, and I'm astonished that anyone on a cycle doesn't wear a helmet. I think it's absolutely asking for trouble. I find that astonishing, but there we go.
So I'll start on the first part of the question. So what you were referring to in terms of our roads, pavements and streetlights, members of the public may not be aware, we are part of a PFI arrangement. So that was an agreement with government that brought in the money that you mentioned. We actually started those negotiations many, many years before the contract was actually signed, and the contract value was a lot higher when we started out. Austerity hit, and the Treasury decided to cut the amount. Yes, they did. I can't remember exact figures. I wouldn't want to tell you that, but the contract value was cut. What that enabled was a 25-year contract, with half of that basically to bring the roads up to a certain standard, and then the rest of the contract, which we are in now, for continued maintenance, and then over time, at various different points, we've invested our own money in for things like pavements. So we're in a PFI arrangement, and the whole idea of that is it maintains roads at a certain standard. It was EU match funded by the government, I think, and it was the government element that was cut.
Has all the money just been spent on roads? Or is it
Roads, pavements and streetlights.
only?
Yes. That was the conditions of the PFI. Update in terms of, well, so the investment period has ended a number of years ago, so we're in the maintenance period. So it's just business as usual. No. So the initial investment was things like resurfacing roads, redoing pavements, and refreshing every streetlight. So the new street columns that you see, the black ones, those are as part of that PFI. I couldn't tell you. I don't have the figures to hand, I'm afraid. But that was the arrangement. And at the end of the 25 years, the vehicle that was used, what we know as Hounslow Highways, will hand back the roads, pavements and streetlights to the council. Part of that was because the money was cut.
Yeah.
We had to change the specification at very, very short notice, actually. I think Councillor Gurewal is going to talk about the point around dimming streetlights.
Yeah, as far as the payments are concerned, we have got a payment pledge which will be implemented in a month's time, and we are, in the first phase, we are doing one road in every ward, and then year by year we will be tarmacking most of the payments in every ward. And your other question was regarding lighting, where you mentioned that there's not enough lights on the streets. I don't know how you come to that conclusion.
Well, you're lucky if you see somebody, except at the last minute sometimes.
I don't know. I don't want to give you an answer for that.
Okay, Catherine wants to talk about road safety.
Yeah, just briefly on the road safety point. I mean, obviously every road user, whether they're a pedestrian, a cyclist, or a driver, has an obligation to behave in a manner that doesn't endanger other people or indeed themselves. And we all, we see people doing it all the time. We see people wandering across the road, looking at their phones. We see cyclists who speed through red lights. It really annoys me every time I see something like that happening. A lot of the times, they're not causing danger, but it can happen. And every cyclist who does cycle around will have experienced danger from other vehicles. Being close past, for example, when there isn't a cycle lane. I've had a very scary experience with a van that was, deliberately aggressing me on my bike. All of this is unacceptable, particularly where it's putting other people in danger. And so we are, one of the things we're going to do is run various campaigns about road safety, about how your behaviour can affect other people. Ultimately, though, it's down to those individuals to make sure that they are driving within the speed limit, that they are stopping for red lights, that they are paying attention to what's around them.
The lighting that was put in has lots of shadows. If you lower it, it's very bad. That's the point.
Thank you. Next question. Yes, sir. Just here.
Can you hear me now? Yeah. My name is Balbara, and I live on Dean Avenue. I've been here for the last 50 years. And I got a couple of just quick four questions for you guys here. One is a shopping complex in Hounslow. And over the 40 years, 50 years, I've seen it deteriorating. And now, City Centre is going away, building some apartments there, so that whole area is gone. The new area you built around the cinema, half or more than half are still empty for the last 2 years. What's the council doing on that to basically attract good names into Hounslow, as they used to be like 20 years back? Is Hounslow doing anything to attract them to come to Hounslow, like reduced rates or whatever offers? Is that something on your cards, or why are we still not having that area? Basically, it's all empty shops, and you go there, it's disgusting.
Councillor Rajah.
You know. And second question is.
An answer to that one.
If you want
Let's
to
answer that one
whoever.
first.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Otherwise, we're
So,
remembering full.
just to be absolutely clear, the treaty centre and the area around it is not owned by the council. It's owned by a private company. And as is the what you described as high street
ultimately
water.
it is your decisions on the rates and stuff like that. It's not
So we have very little control over the rates that are charged. We can't discount rates. There isn't the option to do that.
Is it? So are you saying that it's not going to improve?
No, I was going to answer the question. I'll answer the question for you, but that's important context to keep in mind. Sorry. So with the treaty centre, we're working with the owners, and you'll probably see a planning application later part of this year. Just again, to be really clear, as a council, as part of our influencing of that, and the master plan that we've already done for Hounslow Town Centre, the conversation isn't just about residential, it is about a retail offer as well. So, you know, we want that high street to be vibrant as much as you do. I think we've got common cause on that, and we're having conversations around that. The high street quarter where the cinema is owned by a company called Barrett's. Again, we are working with them because we are incredibly frustrated that so many years after opening that area, there is so many vacancies in those retail units. I have a little bit of sympathy because the economy is tough at the moment, and so people are being quite cautious. But nonetheless, we do want a vibrant retail offer there. My colleague Tom Bruce, as lead member, and myself, we are constantly having conversations around investment into the high street, into our town centres, and in Hounslow more generally. So those conversations are constant, and the biggest issue that we are facing at the moment is that people are very, very cautious until the economy picks up. But what I can assure you is that it's not off the table, and it's absolutely an ambitious ambition for us.
I think it's fair to say the last week won't have helped any of us, frankly.
But
another question?
Are you talking to the...
Have you got another question, sir?
No, I'm just... well, the gentleman is saying is that it's that you are talking to... You're trying to attract people, or...
That's exactly what we're trying to do.
What sort of outlets are you talking to, or negotiating, or is there any...
So we
the big names, John Lewis and Marks and Spencers and all those guys.
So you very rarely negotiate directly with the retailers.
Well, I know that 20 years
you talk
ago,
to the agents that will bring the retailers in. So we're
Yeah.
talking to the agents as opposed to the retailers directly about what we want to do. But at the moment, we don't even have a new centre to offer them. So we need to do it in a sequential way.
Yeah.
And I've just been reminded, actually, quite rightly, the owners of the Treaty Centre are currently consulting, so there is a website, it's all over Facebook, I've seen. Please do respond to that as well.
To the owners of
to
the
the
site.
owners, yeah.
All right, okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Second question is regarding the Bullstone Avenue near the station. Most of the cars parked in there block the footpath, right? And it's been there for quite some times, right? Half of the car is in the footpath. So difficult for the people with the prams or disabled people. Even for us, when we are walking to the station, they are blocking the way. So it's been there for years now, and most of the properties there are rented, and there are probably a couple of cars in one property. So is the council doing anything regarding the path? I mean, the path should be for walking, not for the back of the car sticking into the footpath.
Absolutely. Who could
Actually, I've sent photographs to the council for the last 15 years.
All right.
They have the photographs. They seem to do nothing about it.
Okay.
A blind person, wheelchairs, cannot walk. You guys should try it, because it's not far from Hounslow House. Take a walk during your lunchtime and see for yourself.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Mr. Singh. I was just talking on this issue while you were
Yeah,
having
you were
a cup
there,
of
yeah.
coffee. And
Have you ever made any complaint about it to the council? And whom have you made the complaint to?
I have sent photographs. If you want copies of that, I can dig them out and give them to you later after the meeting.
Thank you for that. Have you contacted your local councillors?
Some of the local councillors are absolutely useless. The only person we've had any work done is Omer Mohammed, who recently became a councillor. All the other councillors are just sitting there, taking their allowances week after week, year after year, and they don't seem to do anything.
Thank you for the compliment anyway.
Yes, that's very true.
What I would like to say is, as I was talking to you when I was having a cup of tea with you, I am cabinet member for parking.
Okay.
And I've given you my card.
Sure.
You write to me.
I will.
I will make sure that it's actioned.
Okay.
And you can, I'll give you a telephone number. If there are any car parked on the pavement, you can call them up.
Okay.
They are active till 12 o'clock in the night, and they will give a PCN to the car park there.
Okay. Well,
Excellent.
Yeah,
You're
we'll
welcome.
see that then.
Thank you, Shivraj.
That's good.
Can I just take this opportunity to welcome Samir to the table?
Thank you.
Sorry it's a bit late. But,
No problem.
right.
Sorry, I was attending one of the youth events, so
Yes.
I was with the young people. That's why I'm late, otherwise I'm normally on time for cabinet and cabinet question times.
No problem
Thank
at all.
you.
Lily?
Yeah, thank you. This was really directed to the two gentlemen who've asked a few questions around issues in their local area, and I just wanted to remind you, you can attend your area forum where you can bring up local issues, because that's quite important, because if there are persistent problems that you're seeing in your streets that are not being dealt with, despite the fact that you might have raised it, then that is a place to
We
do
have
that.
raised several
You have.
times. We
But I think
have
that's
raised.
really important, because that gets logged formally, and also it can be part of a local action plan where you work with your councillors to resolve some of the persistent problems that you've sort of raised here today.
Yeah,
Thank
the
you,
funny
Lily.
thing is
That's
that
very helpful.
when
Next question.
if you park the car there, if somebody, because it's restricted parking, if you park a car there, within about 5 minutes you see a warden there.
Yeah,
with
yeah,
APC,
but
and why
you'll-
can't you give a same thing?
If you write to Shivraj after tonight,
we'll definitely
he'll
do
deal
that.
with
That's
that.
not a problem.
Have we
The
got
other
any
is-
other questions? Because obviously there's lots of other people who want to ask
Yeah.
questions.
Just
You've
two
had-
quick ones there. One
Very
is
quick,
to do
please.
with the Lime bikes, right? We just saw the Lime bike stands mushroom above. We all know about it, right? And there are a lot of unsafe areas. They have mushroom there. At the time we complained, the council said, oh, it's a trial thing for 6 months. Now, I don't know what is happening now. It is over 6 months now. And the areas that are very dangerously placed, what is the council doing about it?
Catherine?
I don't know if line bikes is a quick question, to be honest. So you're right. We implemented a trial of line bike parking bays.
Yeah.
That trial is complete. So there was a complete review. There was a consultation on, firstly, as part of our curbside strategy. Over a year ago, we consulted on the principle of different uses for the curbside, including for bike hire schemes. And then we also carried out an exercise looking at the individual locations of each of the parking bays that had been put in. That was then reviewed again at the request of Cabinet. So officers carried out a very comprehensive review of every single bay that had been put in, taking into account representations from members of the public, who had responded as part of a formal consultation or who had just sent in either complaints or comments or compliments, whatever they were. We also then did a formal consultation exercise with the ward councillors for each ward, looking specifically at each of the bays. And as a result of that, a number of bays were moved to a better location, a smaller number were removed, and some additional ones were added where there was a problem with the parking bays getting too full of bikes. So there has been a very comprehensive review of that, and we're, you know, if you think there are problems with any particular location, do still obviously write either to me, to your ward councillors, to let them know. But we are confident that we've reviewed every single e-bike parking bay. Now, that doesn't mean problem solved. We know that there are still problems. We know that there are problems with bikes being left outside of the bays. And I mean, just yesterday, the leader and I had a meeting with Lime on these particular issues. They have put together an action plan across London, which they say will deal with a lot of the issues that are still remaining. I think the big issue for us as a council is, you know, we want to encourage these schemes because we see it as part of encouraging more people to cycle and to use active travel. But we don't currently have all the tools we need in order to control them properly. Because although we have an agreement, for example, with Lime that they will use parking bays in our borough, there is no legislation to back that up, to insist that that happens. There is no license that they require in order to run a scheme, unlike the e-scooter scheme, for example. So we have also been heavily involved in lobbying the government to improve legislation, and the government has responded to that and has indicated that they will bring in something in the English Devolution Bill, which will enable proper licensing of these schemes. Because at the moment, although we have agreements in place, we don't have the teeth to enforce them.
Thank you very much. Could I ask for another question, because we've only got the last 15 minutes now. That gentleman over there has had his hand up for quite a while.
Right. Cliff, first of all, thank you very much. Thank you very much for all the work you put in for Brentford Football Club, because the nicest thing about living in this borough and watching Brentford play is coming back to Brentford. That is true testimony to all these wonderful people who are our councillors. And trust me, we get to see different parts of the country. We're blessed to live in this borough. So you should all thank these guys.
Yeah, well said.
Also, I will thank the council for the initiative on health and well-being, because that's something I believe in. And you're taking the health awareness vans into the wards, and you're making people more conscious about their nutrition, about controlled substance use, that's alcohol and tobacco and other demerit goods. Then, this is the question I'm going to come on to. You take the health vans and make people aware of the issues and how they can improve their health and well-being, but why is the council not supporting these initiatives? You're giving out alcohol licenses like candy. We've got a huge controlled substance abuse issue in the borough. There's antisocial behaviour issues in the borough. There's obesity issues in the borough. And we've got central government who want to stop young people being exposed to tobacco and vapes, but yet, why don't you impose draconian penalties on those who profit through the trade of controlled intoxicants? Because Sue, you are aware of displacement problems that substance abuse creates, and Lily, you know that controlled substance abuse leads to early onset Alzheimer's and early onset dementia, which is adding to the budget of social care for the elderly. And ultimately, if you guys don't act responsibly and stop people having access to controlled licenses and start taking those licenses off our streets, this borough is not going to be able to fund itself sustainably in years to come. So get your little notepads out and jot this down. Please map and model the needs and requirements of this borough through health and well-being for the next 10, 15, 20 years, because alcohol and controlled substance use is not going to help the well-being and fitness initiatives that a progressive society and a progressive borough needs.
Thank you very much. Lily, would you like to respond?
Yeah, sure. I will respond to the health and wellbeing. Thank you for asking the question, by the way. I'm really pleased that you've asked a question that I can kind of give you some information around. I won't talk about the enforcement. I'll let Councillor Ragwinder Sidhu touch on that. But you're right. I mean, health and wellbeing is really important, and the local council has a statutory duty in terms of public health to ensure that they do whatever possible to, within their limits, of course, to improve the health and wellbeing of their local population and residents. And I don't know if you are aware, but the council is actually consulting on its health and wellbeing strategy at the moment, and really want to have conversations exactly like this with residents around what their views are around how the council could be more powerful, more effective in improving health and well-being. I mean, so for example, you talk about licensing. So we really want to hear that. And if you haven't fed into the strategy, I would really urge you to do that. At the moment, currently, we are attending area forums to talk about the new health and wellbeing strategy and talking to residents about their views, because obviously ultimately we want them to shape the policy. There are lots of health issues in Hounslow, like they are in the whole country really, and the council is very well placed to understand these. So one of the jobs of the council is to understand first what the health problems issues are, whether they're around obesity, smoking, diabetes, alcohol. That's the first step to do, to understand them, and then put in strategies and solutions to try and address those issues. I don't know if you subscribe to the council sort of newsletter, but in there's quite a lot of initiatives around health and well-being under the health and well-being news section, and I think you mentioned it yourself. But so for example, the council operate health outreach sessions across different parts of the borough. Recently in Brentford we had a Stay Active and Steady session, and again outreach health session. It was primarily aimed for those over the age of 60, but the whole point of these sessions is to really connect with residents, whether they have an issue around alcohol or smoking, or they just want to have a health check. But I think these are really good opportunities for us to sort of really find out and support residents in their health and well-being. I could say lots more, but I think that is probably gives you an idea. But I would do really recommend looking on the council website in terms of the health and well-being activities we have. And while I'm here, I'm sorry, I'm just going to plug something. We've got something on the 25th of April taking place in Hanworth, and it is a stay safe and active and steady campaign. It's around, it is aimed for those over the age of 60, but I'm sure if no one's going to check your age, if you want to go along, you can. I'm sure, yeah. You can have your blood pressure checked. You can ask any questions around. It's about aging well, basically. So the sooner you start,
Thank you. Fantastic. Thank you. That's fantastic. Ragwinder.
Thank you. Our licensing policies are drafted as per the legislation from central government. We get the framework from there, and we have to work in that framework. So we are drafting at the moment licensing policy, and I will take it from your views from here to the officers.
But please, because really there's two ways of dealing with an issue. One is through education, but if people don't want to change themselves, then you just stop the draconian policy and take licenses away. Because if they can't sell the controlled intoxicants, we don't get people drinking on the high streets. We don't get people abusing controlled drinking areas. It's simple. You can educate a person, or you can deny the access to controlled intoxicants. We've got unique demographics in our borough.
Thank you. I get the point, and I would just say I don't think any of this is simple, frankly. It's all pretty complicated stuff. So we've got the last 5 minutes. Yes, a gentleman here in the third row. Oh, have you got someone over there? Yes, lady over there, and then the gentleman over here.
Hello, hi. I just want to say, first of all, thank you. Secondly, just sort of zooming out a little bit, I think it'd be great to hear how the council goes about ensuring that resources and focus and finances are spread equally across the borough. I think residents in sort of various areas do wonder about that. Thank you.
Who's
Yeah, I'll take that. So, yeah, we have a duty to serve the whole borough, and there are various different mechanisms. So, obviously, when departmental budgets are handed out, it's for departments to decide how they deploy those resources. But there's an absolute clear expectation from us as the administration that is spread across. So, small example, Lily just mentioned an event that happened in Brentford is now happening in Hamworth. We don't ignore any of the areas. We've done a lot of work on equality, diversity and inclusion. Now, why that's important is because it does point to areas where there is deprivation. And we know that in areas that there is deprivation, we have other social issues in both health, for children's issues, but also in terms of the deprivation of the population there. So there is a bit of a focus on there. And whilst a lot of our super deprivation areas are clustered in and around Heston and Feltham, that's not to say that that doesn't exist across the borough, so Isleworth, and even in Chiswick as well. So it is about spreading that focus across. When we receive money for developments through Community Infrastructure Levy and Section 106. The lead member, again, who unfortunately isn't here because it's the Easter holidays, does look at how that is spread across the borough. It's a bidding system in effect, and we look at bids across and how they tie in with some of our corporate goals as well. So the corporate plan sets a set of strategic aims. The expectation is that that's spread across the borough, and it's not one size fits all as well. That's crucial. So an intervention in one place may be slightly smaller, slightly larger somewhere else, and something else might be slightly bigger there. But certainly that is exactly how we do it. I hope that helps. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Catherine, you want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add something as a small example, I suppose, which is around one of our key kind of net zero policies, which is net zero neighbourhoods. And this is really looking at housing and neighbourhoods and areas across the borough, and how we can leverage private sector funding mixed with public funding in order to benefit people living in those areas through, for example, retrofitting their homes. Because this will not only have benefits for the environment, but obviously also for individuals in terms of lowering their heating bills and just generally making improvements to those neighbourhoods. And we used some of that work that Shantanu's mentioned in terms of the mapping we did through the EDI strategy to pinpoint areas where this was particularly needed. And although this is obviously needed across the whole borough, for our pilot areas, we are really focusing on some of those areas with the most deprivation because we know that those people will benefit from it and need to benefit from it the most in the first instance.
Thank you very much. The gentleman here, last question of the evening.
Sir, one question, like we live in a Bulstrode Road and it is just at the backside of a Lambton Park. Now that a particular park is mostly very filthy. It is full of beers and different cans. It is so difficult to take the kids there, and we have complained many times to the council, but it's the same state of affairs. Even the swings are broken. So with this state of affairs, like we are paying council taxes and the swings are broken. So if you can give us some sort of a plan how to basically ramp up the facilities there.
Yeah, thank you.
So on the specific, if you wouldn't mind sticking around at the end, very happy to have a conversation, and I'll happily take that up on your behalf.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh. Yes.
Thank you very much. Just a quick one on this one. In the Lambton Park, very recently, I think about a couple of months ago, we've had all the cans, beer cans, and all the bottles, which is not on the, I think it's on the side of the Bulstrode Road. We've had it all cleared, which is front of the allotment, and we've had the new fencing on the allotment as well. And the other things, I remember they were looking through it because I was speaking to the local councillors literally about 4 weeks ago. But yes, you can pass it on to us, we can let them know. But the new fencing for the allotments and everything was clear from the front.
Thank you, Samir. Well, remarkably, we've just gone past 8 p.m. It's been a very enlightening evening. I'd like to thank all of you for coming along this evening and for asking your questions. And I'd particularly like to thank the councillors for their very eloquent responses and their honest and open conversations with you. Please stick around for a little bit and have any individual conversations that you would like with the councillors. And with that, I'd like to thank the team at the GTEC for all their support, to Carol and Matt for going around with the mics, and to wish you all a very good evening. Councillor Rajawat.
And if you don't mind, Chair, on behalf of the Cabinet, and I'm sure the audience as well, massive thanks to you. You've been a brilliant Chair. Thank you very much for doing this, despite 3 attempts at getting it. So if you don't mind, a round of applause for our Chair as well.